Spread the love. So adults living with a cognitive disability are too often in the dark about sex and relationships. It's a topic that's not openly talked about and about which there is a lot of discomfort and shame. So Ask a Dude turns sex and relationships from being a hidden topic of conversation to being the topic of conversation and a lifestyle brand via a website. And it's in a safe, enlightening, and irreverent kind of way. So Ask a Dude draws on local comedians, actors, improv artists who may or may not have a disability to film conversations, asking and answering questions about sex and relationships. Now these short films are distributed to group homes and life shares via a network of ambassadors and allies on the staff teams of the homes. And these watching parties have a set of routines associated with them. They're held in comfy places. They spark an open conversation afterwards. Viewers are encouraged to ask questions. Now these questions about sex and relationships are answered in the moment where possible, and they're noted for the next episode that's being filmed. Now, people in the houses also have opportunities to ask questions if they don't feel comfortable in the moment, and they're supported to continue to ask questions by either calling a number and leaving their question, writing an email, writing a postcard, or talking to the ally on the staff team of the house. Now we feel that askadude.com or askadude.tv innovates in 4 ways. The first is that it marries content with information about sexuality and relationships to a distribution system. It generates new content via the distribution system, so when we're out there distributing this to people, we're gathering more questions, more topics of conversation. More dudes to be on in future films and future episodes. And a third way in which it innovates is that it, instead of people receiving information about sexuality and relationships from experts anonymously, it models men having frank, vulnerable conversations about sexuality and relationships with other men. And we feel that the third innovation is actually significant to the culture in general, and as such, we may be able to get other funding sources outside the disability sector, funding sources that are focused more on sexual health education. And we see Ask a Dude scaling into a lifestyle brand that interests people in general and creates some broad cultural change. And so that's the fourth innovation. The fourth innovation is that we create a new hip brand that is applicable to everybody, to culture at large. But this brand has its origins in the community living sector. And it uses the strengths of the community living sector to affect broad social change. So it's actually, rather than adapting trends to the community living sector, it actually uses the community living sector as the basis for creating broad social change and creating a brand that's hip to everybody.
It takes the frank honesty of the people that we serve and elicits those interesting and the characters that we engage with, and takes that, puts it in a really interesting way that is applicable to the culture at large and exciting for everybody to watch.
Right, so it's not stigmatized as a community living thing. It's a brand for everybody.
Yeah. So what is our pilot episode going to look like, guys? We're going to get 3 dudes coming from their dude lives, whether it's chopping wood, bicycling, writing grant, I don't know what dudes do, so many things. It depends on which dudes we find. And they get their text to meet at the pub, and they meet each other at the pub and have a frank conversation where they answer 3 to 4 questions about sexuality in a very kind of conversational way, and answer isn't exactly the right word. They have a discussion about it. And then we take our initial pilot episode and bring it to 3 or 4 different spaces and have these watching parties that John discussed. So in these watching parties, hopefully before we even get started, we're going to have some improv games. We're going to have ways for people to kind of get used to chatting with each other and engaging with each other. And then we're going to start the first video. First question arises. Give it a pause. What do you guys think the dudes are going to say? What's going to happen? It's so exciting. And then we listen to what the dudes say, and we're like, do you think they nailed it on the head? Do you think there's other responses? And meanwhile, we're kind of like thinking about what those responses are, what other questions are being brought up for potential next episodes. And so we go through the whole thing, we generate discussion, and then afterwards we're kind of further generating what other questions, what more things could these dudes answer, etc. And then as one of our people are packing up, the other person's kind of going around to the different people, checking in, seeing if there's more things that haven't gotten discussed. Also within these 3 to 4 spaces, we're going to have at least one ally who is going to be part of the discussion, who's a support worker or a person in these people's lives who, if they have questions later, if they're like, oh, this is a thing I forgot to say, or I didn't even think about that, can kind of come to that person, and that's the person that we're going to be regularly checking in with. And when we have our new videos, we can be like, hey, do you want to watch it with the dudes, etc. Yes. Woo! Comments, questions, concerns?
I do have a question. Have you guys talked about consent from parents of the people served? I only asked because I had a parent come up to me and she told me that, she was really pissed off that one of the day programs was teaching the individuals about sexuality, and she immediately pulled her daughter out of that day program because she wants nothing to do with that.
But I know exactly the that mother has no right to do that.
Yeah, they,
No, but
I wanted to comment here on that. We get into that dilemma around rights and adults that have the right to make those decisions for themselves, and it shouldn't be their families. But the fact is, there is the potential, I think, for stress and anxiety for parents who worry about that kind of thing. So my suggestion would be, do some kind of an educational component where you bring families in, have the conversations with them, explain the whole thing. They're likely going to feel so much better and just be on board. It may not be something you have to do, but it could be something that really supports your outcome in the end, right?
Yeah,
If you have that support and that understanding from families.
Yeah, maybe a pre-watching party or a co-watching party. Or, yeah. Yeah, cool.